Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Windows 10 End of Life, What IT Leaders Need to Do Next. My name is Aditi and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Now, we're just over 5 months away from October 14th, 2025, when Microsoft officially ends its support for Windows 10. This means no more security updates, bug fixes, or technical support. If your organization is still running on Windows 10, this is something you can't afford to ignore. With me today is Dustin Lee Duxbury, Head of Cloud at Wanstor, here to help break down what IT leaders need to do now to ensure a smooth transition. Dustin, welcome.
Thanks, Aditi. As Aditi's mentioned, I am Dustin from Wanstor. I am a head of hybrid cloud, and I have been working for Wanstor for around 19 years. So believe me when I say I have seen quite a lot of migrations in my time, starting with Windows XP to Windows 7, Windows 7 to Windows 8, which didn't go well because nobody really liked Windows 8. Windows 7, Windows 8 to Windows 10, which I think everyone absolutely loves Windows 10, almost the same as Windows XP, although XP is definitely the winner so far. And obviously Windows 10 to now Windows 11, which luckily is not a major jump between the two.
Amazing. And today we'll be sharing some practical insights on how to approach this migration with minimal disruption and maximum security. Okay, so let's get into it. So it seems like we have an exciting talk ahead of us, Dustin, but before we dive in, let's run through what we'll cover today. First, we'll be understanding the implications of Windows 10 end of life. Then we'll cover assessing your current IT environment. Third, we'll discuss planning your migration to Windows 11, followed by executing the migration. And finally, we'll talk about best practices post-migration. By the end of the session, we'll have a clear roadmap to transition from Windows 10 to 11 smoothly. And feel free to drop any questions you have below and we'll answer them as soon as possible in our Q&A section. So let's get started. So Dustin, let's start with the most obvious question. Why should IT leaders be concerned about Windows 10 end of life?
So mainly security, compliance, and business continuity. With no more security updates, unpatched machines are more likely to get hacked by bad actors, allowing them to put malware or ransomware onto your systems, and in really bad and worst case scenarios allows these bad actors to steal data, which is obviously quite a concern for any company.
Definitely. I mean, there are huge cybersecurity risks about Windows 11. You could be facing data breaches, ransomware attacks, and non-compliance fines as well, which I hear have no limit, right? Is a serious risk.
Yeah.
I can imagine, especially in industries like finance, healthcare, legal, and government as well. Navigating a transition as important as this is definitely challenging, but before we dive into assessing your IT environment, I have some exciting news for our audience. Stick around to the end of today's talk and we'll reveal how you can achieve a pain-free transition with Wanstor. You won't want to miss it. So Dustin, let's say an IT leader understands the risks and they want to take action. Where can they start?
So really it starts with assessing your current IT environment. What that means is we need to look at device compatibility. Do you have TPM2, for instance? Do you have Secure Boot? Is the rest of the system capable of running Windows 11? Obviously, it's less now, but in the past, running Windows 11 had a lot of hardware that was required, but hopefully most of the systems nowadays are compatible, but you still need to check this. And you can do this using any form of software that allows you to check compatibility. I know Microsoft does have some software you can use, or for instance, our platform engineering team, they have software that they use to find out across all of our customers who has incompatibility problems with any of their hardware, and we can advise on which ones need updating. Obviously, the other thing that you need to think about is application compatibility. Although a majority of applications are probably going to be supported, you do want to sort of flesh out the ones that need to be upgraded or that will be a problem in the future. So that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And also to make sure that your users are ready for that transition. A lot of users probably already use Windows 11 at home, so for them it might be easy to transition to a system that they're quite accustomed to using at home, now using it at work as well.
So it's just about building that technical migration, making sure it runs without any hitches so your organization is ready to use it. and they're already familiar with the program as well. So you just want to make sure their files are in the right place, right?
Yeah, so obviously if the files, depending on your situation, it might be that your files are locally stored. Users might be saving data to their local machines as opposed to OneDrive or in the shared locations that they should be using, because it does happen. We do store data locally. So obviously any data that is stored locally on a machine does need to be backed up before any process happens with the device.
And if you are stuck on how to assess your migration, it does help to work with a partner like us, because we have a platform already built to help them migrate.
Yeah, so obviously we do this quite a lot. We've been doing it since Windows XP, transitioning to Windows 7. Then there was a transition from 7 to 8, which didn't go well because nobody really liked 8. So migrating from 8 to 10, and now we're in a situation where we're going from Windows 10 to 11. Obviously, in this case, it's a little bit easier because the transition from 10 to 11 is less of a change than from XP to Windows 7. But it's still a change that definitely needs to happen within the next couple of months.
I would say one thing which sold me on Windows 11 is the enhanced productivity. I want to make sure I'm making the most out of my working day, and things like Copilot is an essential part of my working day now. I think Windows 11 has developed the perfect integration with AI. In fact, Forrester states that Windows 11 can deliver an improvement of 15% productivity time due to system performance enhancements and a 5% improvement due to UX upgrades. These improvements to productivity have a value of 4.7 million over the 3 years. So essentially, the upgraded system will be making your workplace more efficient and more enjoyable for the end user. And that's definitely one way to sell it to your organization. So let's say an IT team has done their assessment and they figured out their gaps. What is next?
So the next thing would be to plan the migration. Obviously, you have all the data hopefully by now you have all the data you're required to know how to create this plan. You can do the migration in two main ways, or at least there's two approaches that I know works best. The first one is obviously a planned migration, which is sort of a planned phased migration, and then the other one is a big bang migration. Obviously, with the phased or planned phased migration, it takes longer, and you're doing them. It could be per team, or it could be based on a set amount of users per week. And obviously, a big bang approach would be more, let's build all of the devices at once and send them out, get everyone up and running immediately, which I have seen before. And then obviously the older devices are then destroyed and taken out of the picture.
Whether you approach from a phased migration or the big bang migration, how would this go? Are there any tools that they can use out there?
So we use a couple of tools. Some of the more generic ones, or the ones that are really good, are Microsoft products actually. So Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager is really good for compliance, security settings, any configuration, which is very similar to group policy. And we use Autopilot as well to actually do the deployment of Windows 10 and applications, etc. And that works hand in hand, obviously, with Intune. There are other applications out there, but those are the main ones that we use. Yeah.
And of course, with a Microsoft product, you want to be using Microsoft applications because I assume
they're just native. Yeah.
So what are some common pitfalls to avoid during the migration?
So the main ones I see is user communication, where users are not really aware of what's happening, or they might have heard that they're getting an upgrade, but they don't really know what that means. So being able to communicate that to the user to make sure that they understand what's happening and why it's happening is quite key. A lot of other things like not checking application compatibility leads to user frustration, where an application that maybe only 1 or 2 users have been using, but is still critical to the business, has not been thought of or upgraded. And then obviously coming back to the backups, users will save data to their local drives. Not backing that up is quite critical when it comes to replacing devices.
And I assume that you could probably figure out these sort of gaps in the migration through doing a test, or?
So you can use tools to as I said, to find the gaps would be making sure that you've captured every single one of your devices. You've seen what applications are running. Um, you, you, you you would have to check user devices to make sure there isn't data. That can be done through scripting or through other means. Um, there's many ways of doing it. We have a platform team at Wanstor, for instance, that do this. It's their bread and butter, really. They'll go through the machines. They'll see what's compatible, what's not compatible, and they can even identify data that needs to be transferred from the devices as well. And that just gives you a really nice view of everything that needs to be done when you're doing this migration.
Okay.
To Windows 11.
So preparation is key, essentially.
Yes,
and that's exactly where it helps to work with a Microsoft partner like us. As Dustin mentioned, we have a platform team who do this. It's their bread and butter. And we understand the system end to end. So we know exactly what it takes to deliver a pain-free migration. With Wanstor, we help by delivering a free IT assessment for your organization. And this will make sure that you're Windows 11 ready, will assess your environmental changes, and build an expert migration plan. Okay, so let's say that an organization has successfully migrated. What should they be focusing on next?
So post-migration, that really entails making sure that your systems are continually updated. Now, obviously, moving to Windows 11 doesn't automatically make you secure. It's not just a sort of like install and forget solution. You do need to maintain and manage them. So again, this is making sure you got Windows updates are installed, especially security updates or any updates that are quite important. They should be scheduled and they should be monitored. So again, for instance, at Wanstor, we use our platform team uses different applications to make sure that the compliance of devices is always kept, at a high level. It's the same with Windows updates. We ensure that those updates are up to date on a schedule and they're enforced so that users have to reboot their machines to apply those updates. And that also includes making sure that things like firmware updates are checked and regularly updated as well. There's other things like making sure that your devices remain encrypted. You've got Intune managing or some form of MDM or device management system, and you're using a proper antivirus. Obviously, Windows Defender at the moment it seems to be quite a good one, but as long as your antivirus product is working and is configured correctly, those should be monitored. That does need to be monitored because there are occasions where devices will be unencrypted somehow. If a user has access to unencrypted device for some reason, these are just compliance checks that need to be checked every now and then. Again, this is all handled by Wanstor. We use the platform team to look and monitor all of that sort of thing. But you definitely need to do something like that with your teams.
So if you're handling it yourself, you should be focusing on security, performance, and compliance.
Yeah.
So making sure you have all of the right programs in place to make your devices and your organization's devices safe and secure. So it's not just about migrating, but making the most out of Windows 11 as well. Okay, so now we have time for a few questions. Let me look through right now and I'll pick a couple. Okay, so Dustin, we want to know how can we assess whether your organization should do a phased rollout or the big bang deployment?
So there's a couple of pros and cons for each of them. So if we start with the big bang approach, the pros of that is that your project time is shortened. So obviously, if you know how projects sort of work in general, the longer a project is open, the bigger the risks are associated with the project. So the shorter the project time frame, the less risk you have. So that's quite nice when you have a big bang approach, and also at the same time you're deploying that to everyone, and at the same time you can get rid of all of the issues quite quickly, and you don't need as much support to get that sort of done. That also allows you to get everything pre-done so that it's ready to go, which is quite useful. Cons with that obviously is that you're expecting everyone to be available to do that. You need to then also manage the old devices, make sure they're coming back. They need to be disposed of correctly, and that also might mean that you're not using potential hardware that does still have the ability to use Windows 11. So you have to manage how you sort of deal with that. Phased migrations take longer, so the risk window is bigger. You might have a situation where you're rolling them out and you're relying on people to be available to do those updates. It might be that you're trying to upgrade their current device, or you don't have a pool of devices that you need to use to replace those. So phase migration takes a bit longer, and you might need to think about how you're going to do that with the existing hardware, or potentially purchase enough hardware to make sure you can do that sort of like, get and replace as you go.
What does your organization side play into this as well? Would it be easier to do a phased migration, I assume, in a bigger organization as well?
So big organizations, it really needs to be looked at as a whole. If you have thousands and thousands of devices, it might not be feasible to do a big bang migration, because just the sheer amount of devices that you need to get, either purchased or out there is just it's not feasible. So a phased migration would be better in that case.
And I assume if you want to roll out a phased migration, now would be the time.
Well, considering we're very close to, October's not really that far away, and depending on the amount of users you have, it does take time to replace devices.
Okay. So our next question is about post-migration. What are a few key points to cover in a Windows 11 training session?
So there's not much, it's not a major amount of difference between Windows 10 and 11 when it comes to the actual interface. There are a couple of things that are different. The fact that the Windows start key has moved slightly, so that sort of thing. But on a whole, the actual operating system behaves in the same way as you would expect Windows 10 to behave. Other key factors would be if you're moving from a file server to OneDrive as part of your transition. Obviously, there's a little bit of user training on how OneDrive works, but a majority, hopefully, of customers are now using OneDrive already. But it's those sort of aspects of how how different it is moving from one system to another. But generally speaking, they're fairly similar when it comes to how they work.
And it might come down to the individual as well. If someone's used to just saving locally, they have to manage their own organization of saving onto the drive, essentially.
Yeah, and that becomes a bit easier, obviously, with tools like OneDrive. If they save a lot of data to their desktop or to folders in their documents, and that obviously automatically transitions into OneDrive, which means it's already being backed up. So that's great. It's more about files that they might have stored outside of those known folders that could be an issue, that they'd have to get retrained on to make sure that they save them in the correct locations.
Right. And then we have one question about the deadline itself. So my organization doesn't have the resources to migrate in time. Is there any way to receive security updates on Windows 10 beyond October?
So Microsoft does offer ESU support, which is extended security updates, and essentially it allows you to update your systems past the October 2025 deadline. Obviously, that comes with a cost. So I believe at the moment it was around $60 per device, and every year I believe that will double in cost. So the longer you leave them on ESU, the more expensive it gets, and depending on how many devices you have, that could add up quite quickly, as a cost, which is it's not I don't think it's a sustainable cost.
Okay, so there is a short-term solution if you are struggling to meet the deadline. However, as we mentioned, it's not a sustainable long-term solution. So even you could perhaps consider a phased migration, and then some of the exterior devices consider just giving them ESU, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, ESU could be quite useful for situations where, let's say you do have a team that does use a legacy application. You can't update because that legacy application is quite important to the company. You haven't got a transition plan, or you don't have a roadmap to update that, then you might be stuck where those devices do have to continue existing. ESU is really good for that. So that allows you a little bit more time to think about how you can transition away from those legacy applications.
Okay, so you're buying some extra time with ESU, essentially.
Essentially, yeah.
And then I think we have time for one more question. And this one asks, okay, when assessing your IT environment, how can you identify a migration gap?
So again, when you're doing your assessments, it depends on how you're trying to run it. If you're just trying to do it through an Excel spreadsheet, obviously, that might not be the best way to do it. our platform team uses tools that allow us to actually look through all the systems, and it works with Windows 11 in a way that we can actually identify what systems won't be compatible. It also goes through the applications to make sure they're all compatible, and obviously smaller things like making sure the CPU and memory requirements are all met. But you do need some form of software to be able to do that.
So what I'm really hearing is that transitioning to, or building a transition or a roadmap to Windows 11 also helps with adding on to any existing roadmaps or any sort of like serverless infrastructure as well.
So yes, it definitely helps. Windows 11 is the operating system that Microsoft currently have available. It will work towards any sort of transition to any new services. It obviously has complete support for any native serverless technologies from Microsoft, such as Azure or any Microsoft 365 features and functions that are coming out. It's got better integration with things like Copilot and AI. So it is definitely part of the strategy to move to more serverless infrastructure or any sort of transition away from legacy on-prem solutions.
Okay, Windows 11 onto a new level of infrastructure essentially. So that's our time on the Q&A. Thank you all for your questions and your interactions today. And don't forget that we'll be sending out a guide. So if we haven't answered your question, you may be able to find the answer in the guide there. And of course, we'll be sharing some contact information so you can reach out to the Wanstor team with any questions you have. This has been really fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final advice?
Yeah, don't leave it to the last minute. Planning is very important. If you look at the costs of doing the migration work now versus how much you have to spend in unforeseen costs at a later date, whether it be from ransomware or from data being stolen and you having to pay those GDPR costs, that's really something that you should be aware of. The cost now is definitely going to be smaller than the cost in the future.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, transitioning to Windows 11 is a matter of security as much as it is a matter of getting your hands on a new shiny OS system.
It's mainly security.
It's mainly security, definitely. And if you need support, don't forget that Wanstor is here to help. We offer free IT assessments and expert migration planning. So get in touch if you want to hear how we can deliver a seamless migration before the clock runs out. The countdown is on, and as Dustin said, don't wait till the last minute. We'll send you our Windows 11 migration guide after this session. Thank you so much for joining us today.